EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Victory Monday here on Birds 365. The Birds win their 9th straight victory. They're 11-2 on the season, but a lot of talk, a lot of controversy coming from this game versus the Carolina Panthers. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Monday morning, my friend?
I'm pretty low, not figurative, literally. Anyway, that's another story, but hopefully I'll fix it by tomorrow. I mean, I think it had a little bit of a 2023 tint from the perspective of no style points, and everybody's upset about the victory over the Carolina Panthers. Certainly was ugly, but they got it done. Had a little bit of a break, Leggett dropping the football. Otherwise, we could be really having some discussions today. And maybe it would have been good in a weird way because, there's so many people sticking their heads in the sand about this passing game and blaming you and blaming me and blaming the media, the evil cabal of the media against the Eagles. Everybody in that locker room said it. Don't listen to me. I don't care. Right. Listen to Jordan Mailata. Listen to A.J. Brown. Listen to Devontae Smith. Listen to Jalen Hurts. Everybody knows it. It is ugly right now, that passing game. And the fact that they're able to win games is pretty freaking impressive. I got to be honest with you, with this passing offense. It's gotten to that point, and it's gotten, when you consider the talent on this team, the fact that they can't throw the football against the Carolina Panthers, it's ugly. And Jalen Hurts, this is the money quote. Some things don't get you until it gets you. And what he's trying to say is, because we've been persevering, doesn't mean it's not going to get us in the end.
Exactly.
So everybody, including Jalen Hurts, for everybody wants to jump on their sword for him today, acknowledges this passing game isn't where it needs to be. So take your heads out of the sand or don't, but it's an issue. And when you project this team moving forward, because it's not about beating Carolina on December 8th, it's about going where you all want to go. And that's beating the Detroits or Minnesotas or Green Bays of the world down the road en route to the Super Bowl, whoever that might be. Maybe it'll be Eagles, Chiefs, and two teams that look shitty winning games, and we'll see who's the shittiest that can take it all the way to the finish line.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mack. We will get into that. Number one storyline in this game. Can the Eagles pass the ball? I mean, Twitter's erupting, YouTube's erupting. Everybody wants to, there's people fighting on every side of the aisle about the Eagles. It is starting to get that 2023 feel where we all debate about the team that's 11-2. But listen, there is a lot of questions to be had. I will give everybody the rundown. The Birds won 22-16 yesterday. Xavier Leggett dropped the ball in the end zone, or on the way into the end zone, in the last 40 seconds of the game that probably would have given the Panthers a win. Saquon Barkley eclipsed LaShawn McCoy's franchise rushing record here in Philly yesterday. He had 20 carries for 124 yards. Yes, you heard that right. 124 yards, 1 yard shy of our jersey giveaway. Johnny Mack, let's get into that passing game, though. How much of an issue is this, man? Bring me the reality. Bring me the dose of reality. I'm an Eagles fan. I sit here, I say, this is an issue. We got A.J. Brown, we got Devontae Smith, and we can't hit the broadside of a barn in the passing game. What say you? How big of an issue is this? What's the objective point of view on what this team is doing? Because they are 11-2, but they were 10-1 last year. So
yeah, well, I mean, net yards passing against the Carolina Panthers, 83 yards yesterday. Yeah, 83 yards.
It's just a joke.
83 yards. A couple that last week with Baltimore. It's astonishing they won both of those games. But, I think it highlighted, the Leggett play highlights a lot of things. It's what I've been talking about all year. What you're trying to do is increase the margin of error and be as foolproof as possible. and you saw how razor close to play the way they play. Saquon had a good game.
Right.
As you mentioned, 124 yards on the ground, 1 yard short of giving away another free jersey. Sets the franchise record. Solid game. Not a spectacular Saquon game. Up near 200, over 200. And you see, all right, if somebody even does a pretty good job on him
Right.
versus him running rampant, all of a sudden you're in a dogfight at the end of the game against a bad football team. And the defense was, that was the first time since the bye week, since the Eagles defense had given up 300 total yards. So they weren't on their game either, at least comparatively speaking. But again, 302 yards in the modern NFL for a defense, that's damn good. So you had a damn good performance from the defense. You had a solid, very good performance from Saquon, and you're a sliver away from losing that football game. Because that's how small the margin of error is to win that way if you don't throw the ball for more than 83 total yards.
Yeah, I mean, the more I'm thinking about it and the more you lay it out right there, this really was a game that proved or showed exactly what we've talked about all year long and debated about many times, where, you're right. We ran for 209 yards yesterday, John, between Kenny Gainwell, Saquon, and Jalen Hurts. 209 yards. That's a big day on the ground by any metric.
Oh yeah, huge day.
I mean, and the defense, like you said, they played pretty good. So that's what many have said. Okay, if we're not going to pass effectively, well, having a great defense will and a great running game is what can get you over the top. Well, yesterday was a prime example of having a great running game and still a pretty good defense. I mean, look, I know the defense didn't have their best game, but they gave up 16 points. I mean, are we going to beat up on the defense? They gave up 16 points for crying out loud, and they almost lost the game. Boy, John, what's the solution here? What's the fix? Where if you're in that Eagles locker room or you're in the group chat between AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts today, what's the conversation? What's the next move for them to try and get this thing going?
I almost, if I were Nick and but it would have been this game. It's almost the horse is out. It's almost a bad thing that they're still in it for the number 1 seed. And what I mean by that is, if you're not, they haven't clinched the NFC East, but it's basically a fait accompli. They did clinch the postseason. Final 4 things had to happen. Lions had to win. They did. Eagles had to win. They did. Falcons had to lose. They did. And the final one was Arizona had to lose in the late game. They did. So the Eagles are officially in the playoffs. 4 for 4. Nick Sirianni's an actual 4 for 4 guy, and not like in all the cities teams, but 4 for 4 in the playoffs. So they deserve credit for that. They're going to win the NFC East. But they got to win games to keep up with Detroit to try to get that number 1 seed. And I agree with that. I mean, that you got, as long as it's on the table, you got to try to go get the number 1 seed. And that means you can't just use a game and try to get it right. You got to go win the game. And the way for this team to win right now is to run the ball with Saquon and play good defense. So they got to keep going. And you almost want them to take a game like this, and what they should have done, at least from my estimation, is said, you know what? We got to get this freaking thing right. Let's try to get it going in the passing game. But they're fighting for their lives against Carolina, which is pathetic. And I had to go back to what they do to try to win the football game, and they ultimately did. So, can you do it against Pittsburgh? No, you'll lose. There's some time with Dallas and the Giants, but if you're locked in week 18, you're not going to play your starters. Can't do it against Washington. You have to win that game no matter what. There's not a lot of time. This is the lot they've chosen, and this is probably the lot they have to go down to win football games. So, the only goal now is to take those. How many pass attempts were there yesterday? I have to look real quick.
21. Jalen was 14 of 21 for
21.
108 yards.
You have to take those 21 passing attempts and get them more effective, to say the least. And so many of them are there. I haven't rewatched the game. I'm going to rewatch the game today.
Oh, I rewatched it last night. It was uglier on the rewatch,
But
in my opinion.
being there live and having the overhead view, there's open receivers, and he's just not pulling the trigger. We've been talking about this since week 1. Everything's late.
John,
When he
it's one
does
thing to
pull the
not pull
trigger.
the trigger, though. It's one thing to not pull the trigger to Grant Calcaterra or to Jahan Dotson or to to Paris Campbell. He's not pulling the trigger to A.J. Brown.
It's bizarre. And when he does, it's successful. The comeback to AJ, and it's like he's open. It's slot, bang, RPO. He's open, and it works. He only had 4 targets. He caught them all. I don't know. Right now, it seems like a headspace problem. For whatever reason, Jalen isn't trusting what he's seeing on the field, and he's hesitating and holding the ball, and that creates, either throwaways, sacks, or missed opportunities. And then the other problem with that is sometimes he extends the play and makes big plays. The biggest offensive plays were extended plays: 35-yard run by Jalen, 15-yard run by Jalen, 27-yard pass by DeMonte. That's all off schedule. Kellen Moore's got to be sitting there. Everybody hyped him up before the season, and I don't think Kellen's doing a bad job. He's got to be sitting there. Nothing works when I call a play. The only thing that works is off schedule.
Yeah.
And how do you run an off schedule offense? I don't know. And then at the end, the Eagles are 11-2. This team should not be 11-2 with this passing game. And it masks a lot of issues. But the good news is everybody knows it's an issue. Everybody in that locker room knows it's an issue, including the quarterback. So they're not putting their heads in the sand. Maybe some of the fans are, not all of them. See some of the comments they say. And then you get the other group that says Hurts is terrible. No, he's not terrible. But he's not having a good season throwing the football comparatively from where he was before.
He doesn't look comfortable, man. He really doesn't. I mean, I'm not trying to say the guy's terrible. I think it's pretty impressive what the guy has accomplished in his career. But to sit here right now and say that he is an effective quarterback when it comes to passing the ball, like it's some people try and make me seem like I'm crazy or make me like it almost makes me question, am I crazy? But it's like it's passing the ball. That's what football is.
The crazy people are the ones who not acknowledge.
You can't pass the ball. That's what football is. You run and you pass. If you can't pass, that's like not having a right leg. I mean, you need it. It's an important thing. And then you look around the league, and there's plenty of other teams that are running the ball great as well. Like Detroit, they got 2 backs. Jared Goff's still throwing the ball well.
Yeah.
Look at Lamar. I'm not trying to compare us to Lamar Jackson, but they got a running back who's got 1,600 yards, 1,500 yards. He's still passing the ball well. Imagine what our team would be if we had Saquon running like he is and utilizing 2 top 10 wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, if this team were not even bad, 8-5, a good team headed to the playoffs, but not in the mix with the top teams.
Right.
People would acknowledge how bad the passing game is, and they'd be killing it on a weekly basis. The fact that they're 11-2 is masking the issue. It always does. It's a cliche for a reason. Winning cures everything. Winning, as long as you win, people are going to make those excuses. Well, yeah, but we win, and the guy wins a lot of football games. There's truth. There's some truth to that. But again, I go back to not my words, not the haters' words, Jalen Hurts' words. And I'll say it again. Some things don't get you until it gets you.
Big thanks to everybody for checking in this morning on Birds 365. Don't forget to hit that like button. We got a big crowd in here, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Hit that like button for us. Let's try and get to 200 likes today on the show, and appreciate our super chats. Going to get to all 3 super chats and any more that come in right before the end of the segment here. John, one other thing I want to talk about. I know the passing game is the big metric, and there's plenty of other things that happened in this game. Saquon, obviously, a big storyline, setting the franchise record. But Jake Elliott, John, how big of a concern is that for you? And
it's a big concern.
What the hell is going on?
Sometimes kickers, are like golfers and they lose their swing and have, bad seasons. Jake's only had one bad season, Doug's last season. So 2020, and then he bounced back. And you hope the same thing's going to happen here. But, it's got to happen in season. I looked it up yesterday. He was 15 of 17 on 50-yard kicks from 2021 to 2023. He's the best kicker in football from long range. Now he's 0 for 5. The biggest issue for me is the end of the game. Typically, if Jake Elliott
opted to punt, basically, yep.
If Jake Elliott's Jake Elliott, they just kick that football and the game's over.
Yeah, it sounded like that was a 60-plus yarder. That would have been a 55, 56.
54, I think, 54, 55, somewhere in that range. But if it's a normal Jake Elliott, that 15 of 7, they're kicking that. No even questions. They're just trotting out there, kicking the field goal, trying to put the game away. He did all this convoluted nonsense because he's lost confidence in Jake Elliott. And, hey, he should. I'm not blaming him for losing that confidence. Now, he tried to downplay about the wind. It wasn't even windy yesterday. It was windy 2 days ago. Then I would have bought that. So, they tried to draw him off sides at first so they could go for it. Then they would have went for it most likely. But and then they took the delay instead of calling timeout and kicked it down. And by the way, Braden Mann did a tremendous job, and so did Avonte Maddox for all the Avonte haters. That was a perfectly executed punt. Just down to the 2 or 3 yard line. Avonte catches it like he's returning it. Tremendous punt. And you got Bryce Young who's got to go to the whole football field. That's another thing. But all that stemmed from the lack of confidence in Jake Elliott. Even though the punt was spectacular, couldn't have been better. Could have been a little better if he went to the 1, but it was a phenomenal job by Braden Mann. So they executed it perfectly. And again, we talk about margin of error. It's what aggressiveness. You can say, oh, that's smart, push them back. The Eagles are the Eagles because of their aggressiveness. The Lions are the Lions because of their aggressiveness. And they try to, put their foot on the throats of teams, but they didn't do that yesterday because of their of Jake Elliott and his poor performance. And that's not a good thing if they're going to start to be less aggressive, especially with the big hurdle down the road, because Detroit's not going to be less aggressive, and they're going to try to take advantage of every opportunity they have.
Yeah, and lucky for Jake, a penalty wiped off, also a missed point after for Elliott yesterday.
Yeah, I don't blame that one because that was offside. So you're going to miss. Guys are coming to block it.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm not going to blame that one on him, but because that was a penalty. And by the way, I'm glad you brought that up because the Eagles got a free yard. They went for it. They got the 2 points. So please shut up about that movie.
If it's going to make it a 2-possession game, I'll still fight for the point. But I get it, Johnny Mac. You proved they showed you what the philosophy is in that situation. Let's get to our super chats, and then we'll get to Jeff Kerr joining us on Birds 365. Schmidt Digler says, I think there's a reason the front office bought low on a first-round talent at quarterback. Hurts can't run Moore's offense mentally. This offense is the same scheme it has been for the last 3 coordinators. If Pitt had Hurts equals Dobson. I don't know what he said at the end
Josh, the pastronaut, I don't agree with that, but I don't know if that's what he's saying. But I'm trying to, if there's a reason the front felt low in the first round. Well, they have gone back to the same offense. The offense has been the same. I'm glad somebody noticed. And people blame that on Nick. First of all, if you go back to 2021, Nick ran a different offense at the beginning of the season. It failed because he put too much on Jalen's plate. Then they scaled it back. And they built essentially what is the current offense you see, which continued to Brian Johnson. A little bit, different play callers have different feels. Shane certainly had a better feel for play calling than Brian, and probably Kellen as well, to be honest. So that, little differences, but they scale back, but that's what good football coaches do. They don't come in and say, "Oh, you run my offense." Some do. Brad Childress did. Bad football coach, but I digress. And others build around the talent they have. That was one of the things Nick was most proud of when he sold himself on at Indianapolis, because of what happened with Andrew Luck. They had to build 3 different offenses in 3 different years for 3 very different quarterbacks. Andrew Luck, top tier. Jacoby Brissett, bottom tier. Phillip Rivers, very good, but aging, couldn't move. They had to build 3 completely different offenses to take advantage of the quarterbacks they had. You've seen different offensive coordinators try to do different things and scale back to the same point. And that's because they're trying to take advantage of what Jalen does well.
We'll see how it plays out here. Brian Pumper checks in. J-Mac looking like Christian Ponder to me.
You're going too far, Brian. Jalen Hurts is a hell of a lot better than Christian Ponder.
Brian was in rare form on the post-game show last night. Brian Gardner checks in. Passing game is bad. Vic can't go with just a 3-man DN rotation. Thielen had the game I thought Kupp or Nakua would have, and I'm worried about Jake. Well, you summed it all up there, Brian Gardner, in a short couple of sentences. John, what's your reaction there to what Garner said?
Well, Thielen was great. I love Thielen.
Yeah. He took Cooper to Gene to school.
He's 34, but I think that's going to help Cooper. I really do.
I do too. I'm with you on that for sure.
Cooper's a very, very smart player. He's going to learn from that. I think it's only going to help him. But very rarely are you going to have a player like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. 3-man rotation. Yeah, I think that's a problem. Chuck Harris played for 4 snaps. So they're trying to get him involved a little bit at least. And I don't like Nolan Smith playing 50 plus snaps. So I agree with that. That's something to keep an eye on. And yeah, I mean, Jake hasn't made a damn kick over 50. You should be worried. And like I said, the Eagles scaled back their typical philosophy. They went against it because they lost confidence. Even though Nick denied that, of course he's going to deny it. Bullshit. 54 yards for Jake Elliott.
Yeah.
Last year. That's not even a blip on the radar for the Eagles. Kick it.
Yeah, it's not like we're talking 60 plus here. I mean, 54 yarders. It used to be, as John mentioned, he was 15 and 17 on those. He used to be near automatic on those kicks. Not anymore. We'll get to our commercial break. We got Jeff Kerr coming up on Birds 365. The one other thing I'll say before we get to the break on the passing game is, I don't know what more Mr. Howie Roseman can do. Like, it's a third coordinator. You got 2 top 10 wide receivers. You got a great tight end. You got the best offensive line in football. Now you have the best running back in football. Like, it's all there. Like, any quarterback, forget NFL quarterbacks, any quarterback that dreams of playing in the league would look at this roster and say, boy, what a dream that would be to play with. It's all there. Jalen's got to figure this thing out. Jalen, the offensive coaches, whoever it is, wherever you want to put the problem, somebody's got to figure this out because the passing game is inept. We'll talk about that with Jeff Kerr coming up next here on Birds 365 before we get to the break. I'll tell you about the great people at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. Use this promo code YouTube150. Gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring the show here on Birds 365. We'll be right back in 3 minutes with Jeff Kerr.
Ignite your nights.